Hey everyone, in this video we're going to go over the latest pre-release of CKD, which is Open Web Services for dApps. And if you're not quite sure what that means, that's really the point of this video, is to show you rather than tell you. So before we get to the demo though, I did want to point you over to our GitHub. I wrote a little bit of a blog post just kind of detailing a little bit more of the thinking behind CKD. And I'm not going to go into all of it here, but yeah, if you want to, you can check it out. There's a link in the show notes. But first step is we're going to go over to ckd.dev, and that also has a page set up with a little bit kind of just similar stuff, kind of the thinking behind it and what we're kind of aiming to do. But like I said, the purpose of this video is to show you rather than tell you. So we're actually going to start off by going over to the docs section, because that has a link to our CKD React examples website. And that'll kind of just give you an idea of what it's like, or, well, I guess what it's going to be like when you visit a site that's using CKD. And on the homepage here, we have some kind of instructions, basically for how to set it up if you're a developer and you want to use CKD in React, which is actually really easy. I would encourage you to try it out if you haven't before. But yeah, we're actually going to go over to this. Let's go over to this use account example. And you'll notice right away we see this run CKD to sign in button. This is what's going to display if the user hasn't installed the CKD app before, or I guess if they aren't running the CKD app. So if we click that button, it'll actually link us back over to the ckd.dev site, to the run page, and it'll basically have these instructions for running CKD. Right now it's a little bit more involved than I would like it to be. Eventually the plan is to make this basically just an app that you download and run. So it should be super simple, but for now there are some dependencies. You'll need to clone the GitHub repository and then run a couple commands to run it. But in my case, I've already done most of these steps, so I'm just going to go to basically the final one, and I'm going to copy this command, and I'm going to go over, I'm using Visual Studio Code, but you can just do this in a terminal if you want to. So again, I already have the CKD repo cloned here, so I'm going to copy paste that command and then hit enter. And you'll see it just started up CKD on localhost 1818. And if we go back over here to the CKD React examples website, you'll notice that the button changed to create a CKD account. And just as a demo, again, I'm going to quit out of the CKD application, so I'm going to stop running it. You'll notice it went back to run CKD to sign in. So let's say the user just isn't running the CKD app, they would know to, oh, I need to run it. So let's run that again, and we'll see that the button text will change back to create a CKD account. And when I click this create a CKD account, it'll take me over to, again, localhost 1818, which is where CKD is running. And it'll tell me in the future we're going to have some better onboarding, but right now it's just pretty bare bones, and I'll do my best to explain it here. But we're going to set a CKD passcode. This is basically a passcode so that when you visit it in the browser, it's somewhat secure at least. So I am going to set a passcode. Okay, so now that I set my passcode, I need to authenticate using the passcode I set. So now it's asking me to add an account. So I am just going to call this account, what should I call it? Let's just say all about the demo. Or actually, we'll just say demo. Let's not get carried away here. And yeah, it'll basically just ask you for a display name. This is just what CKD is going to display. We'll see in a moment where that comes in. It'll also ask you for some dAero daemon RPC credentials. Well, not credentials, but a dAero daemon RPC URL. Then it'll ask you for dAero wallet credentials. So that'll be an RPC URL, then a username. I believe I have one running with CKD. And then I would also recommend setting up like a password. And I think CKD actually requires that you use a user and password. So, okay, so I think those credentials are correct. So I just created that account. And now if we go back over to the React examples website, you'll notice that the button changed to sign in with CkD now that we have an account. And this is a drop down with all the accounts. So I could create, for example, I could create another, we could just say demo number 2. And then this one, I'll just put in some bad credentials. We won't actually use that one. But if we go back here, you'll notice that that dropdown got updated in real time, and we now have both of those accounts to select from. But I'm going to do the first one because that's the one with the correct, hopefully correct credentials. And when I click this sign in button, it's going to authenticate with WebAuthn. And in Chrome, it'll basically ask, do you want to use a USB security key or this device? Which in my case, I want to use this device because that'll let me just use Touch ID. I don't think it'll be too hard for us to get USB security keys working, but at least right now they're not set up to work with CkD. So I would recommend using this device. And yeah, so when I click this device, it basically asks me to identify using Touch ID. So I'm just going to use Touch ID. Now it's saying see the CkD app because we actually need to approve this website for CkD. So it tried opening a pop-up actually or not a pop-up, but a new window or a new tab, but it got blocked. So we can, if we want to, we can say always allow pop-ups and redirects from this website if we trust it enough to do that. So I'm just going to say do that. And yeah, I probably should have clicked the link. I don't know why it didn't open it, but anyway, I'll refresh and do it again. So and notice the second time that I did that, it didn't ask me which method I wanted to use. It already kind of knew that I wanted to use Touch ID. So yeah, that worked. It opened the new tab, and it basically, again, this is pretty bare bones, but it basically tells us this is the account that we're authorizing, and then this is the website that we're authorizing. So I'm going to click Authorize Login, and now that it's authorized, it just closed that window, and you can see that we're now signed in to the demo account. And this is some example code, and if you're not a developer, it might look a little bit foreign, but it hopefully isn't too bad to wrap your head around. But basically, it's just fetching data from CkD to display the account name. So there's another one that is the useDero channel. And so if we go over here, what this one does is it'll display some Dero information like our wallet address, our balance, the current height, and then just the unlocked balance, which is, yeah. And just to give you an idea, I'm going to go back to the homepage for the CkD React examples, just to give you an idea of how easy this is for a developer. I mean, you can look at the instructions here. It's really, I mean, like aside from creating the app, which I mean, you kind of have to do in any case, it's really just two steps to get CkD set up. You do yarn add CkD-react, and then I'm going to go over to the CkD React examples repo. And then you just need to wrap your application in this CkdProvider component, which comes from the CkD React library. So really simple to get set up. And then again, let's go back to the useDero example. You can see this source code, and I'll open that over here. But yeah, you can see how easy it is to use CkD React. You just import this hook, and we have some nice TypeScript types on here. So, you know, if you wanted to, maybe you didn't want to display, maybe you just wanted to display the address in here. So let's do that real quick. You could just do dero.data.address, and you get that nice autocomplete. And that's about it as far as the demo goes. But one thing I did want to show you before we go is just how everything with CkD updates in real time, and you don't really have to, as a developer, worry about making a bunch of different requests and handling all these different cases. You just kind of get what you get with these channel APIs and hooks. So real quick, let's edit the display name for the CkD demo account. And notice the button over here. We're signed in as the demo account. And when I click update account, it's going to change that name right away. And then also, if we want to, we can, you know, let's let's sign in as this demo account number 2. And if, like, let's say if we wanted to, we could authorize the login over in this window. And it'll get recognized over here. But then if we wanted to, we could even just, well, I guess let's remove the entire account. So we could remove the entire account and it'll automatically get logged out and it'll display this trouble connecting message for a second. And now we're back and we can just log into the CKD demo. So, I mean, nothing too crazy, but it is pretty cool how everything just gets updated in real time and you as a developer don't really have to do a whole lot. And oh yeah, one other thing real quick before we go, I guess I'll just show you the CkdSignIn component. Kind of along those lines. I mean, all you really have to do to handle authenticating with CkD is render the CkdSignIn component. So I've seen some docs for some other like similar things to CkD for developers, and it's much more involved. You're doing a lot more work by yourself, whereas the CkdSignIn component just takes care of all of this for you. Now that's it as far as the demo goes. Obviously, you can't really do a whole lot with it now, but I hope that kind of illustrates what you'll be able to do in the future with CkD, especially once we get some more services integrated into the application. So I did want to talk a little bit about kind of the roadmap, what services we're looking at building, and sort of the philosophy, or at least development philosophy that we're kind of following for this. And you know, 2 chapters from this book called Rework came to mind when I was thinking about this slide. And number 1 is scratching your own itch. So what we want to do, at least personally, I want to build things that I know that I'm going to use, because I don't want to just start building things for the sake of building them just because I think other people might want them. So we're going to start with some stuff, and I'll get into that a little bit later with the roadmap. But that was one chapter, and then the other chapter is you're better off with a kick-ass half than a half-assed whole. So again, we don't want to build just a whole lot of stuff. Really, I just kind of want to focus on getting the basics right in this first version before we go crazy with a bunch of different services and stuff. So let's take a look at the roadmap. Today we have CkdPre.3 3, and I guess the way I would describe that is WebD. So again, the focus of this release is really illustrating what I think true dApps could look like, because I mean, yeah, we have this Web3, but in a lot of cases in Web3, and there's a link in that GitHub post that I made to an article. I think it's on moxie. I want to say net, but I'm probably wrong. There's a link to a blog post where it basically talks about someone's first impressions on Web3, and basically they came to the conclusion that Web3 is, at the end of the day, not a whole lot different than Web2 or a lot of these centralized web services. Sure, it uses these decentralized application platforms in the background to power their applications, but the applications that are getting provided to users at the end of the day are centralized applications that are hitting a centralized API, so api.somecompany.com, for example. Whereas CkD runs on your machine. You control basically everything. It's open source. You can run it anywhere. And it hits localhost. It doesn't hit some company's server somewhere. So that's basically where we're at today. And again, it doesn't have a whole lot of services. All it can really do right now is display your dAero balance and your account name. But for the rest of this year, I guess our roadmap for this year is really focused on a service called M. And I'm hoping in a little bit more than a month, we should have some sort of an RFC or some more details on M. But the basics are, I want to create some sort of a way for people to support things like open source projects. And it's going to be very similar to, I mean, just sending dAero to an open source project, but instead of just sending dAero to CkD or Stacked in this case, you would be able to send it to an M smart contract. And as a token of appreciation, in return for giving us dAero, you would get a certain amount of tokens. And I think we're going to call them stars because there's that star in the M logo. And it's Stargate. I mean, what a great combination, right? So yeah, in a little over a month, hoping to have some sort of an RFC on that. I don't think we'll have another like pre-release because that's kind of a short timeline, but I do want to start developing a little bit more in public and just to get some more feedback from the community because I'm fairly new to developing these types of applications, so need all the help we can get. So yeah, and then hopefully after a few months, we'll have that service ready along with some pre-built binaries. I didn't really go over it too much, but on the run page of the CKD website, you'll notice that you kind of have to build everything yourself. You have to install these dependencies like Elixir and Node.js and stuff like that. The goal for this pre-release is going to be to have those binaries or whatever pre-built so that you'll still have to run it in a terminal, but you won't have to download all these dependencies and compile it yourself. Then after that, we can really focus on bundling those pre-built binaries into apps. So I think first probably going to focus on a Mac app just because that's what I use, and I don't think I have the bandwidth to do a whole lot of applications. Hopefully we can get some community help, and if we are able to, like if I'm able to recruit like a Mac developer that actually knows what they're doing, that could be great because they can focus on that and I can focus on making the services a little bit better. So yeah, that's basically the roadmap. That's what we've got for you today. I would encourage you to check out ckd.dev for some more info, and I'll talk to you later.